Hold on. Stop. That mark on your neck. Where did you get it? The billionaire said. Michael, startled, defensive. Sir, I'm just working. Please don't grab me. But Billionaire didn't hear the room anymore. Not the music, not the guests, not the speeches. His eyes were fixed on the small crescent birthmark glowing under the chandelier, the exact same shape he'd memorized 2 decades ago. Answer me, please. That mark. Has anyone ever told you what it means? Michael, confused, uneasy. No. Why? What's wrong with it? The billionaire took a shaky breath, stepping back as if he'd seen a ghost. Because if he was right, if that mark was what he feared, this young stranger was about to unravel a secret buried for 21 years. The billionaire whispering, "What's your name?" And that was the moment everything began to crack. The night Richard Hale walked into the Crystal Crown Hotel in Midtown Manhattan, he expected another predictable charity gala. Expensive suits, hollow speeches, and people pretending to care about causes they barely understood. It happened the moment he stepped into the ballroom. Chandeliers glittered overhead. A jazz band played soft covers of American classics. New York's elite floated across the polished floor holding crystal glasses of champagne. Richard adjusted his cufflinks and scanned the room, mentally preparing himself for small talk. Then he saw him, a young black waiter weaving through the crowd with a silver tray of drinks, moving with ease and quiet confidence. White dress shirt, black vest, bow tie, focused, and a face that made every muscle in Richard's body go rigid. Sharp jawline, piercing dark eyes, the same curve at the corners of his mouth, like his smile always hesitated before fully forming. But that wasn't what stole Richard's breath. It was the birthmark. On the left side of the young man's neck, just below the ear, was a faint crescent-shaped mark. A small, moon-like curve, identical to the one the doctor had pointed out on his newborn son 21 years ago. A son who, according to that same doctor, never made it. Richard's heart started pounding in his chest so loudly he could hear it over the music. "No," he whispered. "That's not possible." The young man approached, tray balanced in one hand. "Champagne, sir?" he asked politely. His voice wasn't familiar, but the calm, respectful tone tugged old threads inside Richard's chest. For a moment, he just stared. "Sir?" the waiter repeated, offering the tray. Richard blinked. No, thank you." The young man gave a polite nod and moved on, weaving between wealthy donors who barely glanced at his name tag. Richard's eyes stayed glued to that birthmark. He'd only seen one like it in his life, on a child he held for 5 minutes, before a nurse gently took him away. "Rich, you look like you just watched the stock market crash." A familiar voice dragged him back. Mark Ellis, his longtime friend and lawyer, stood beside him in a navy suit. "You good?" Mark asked. "You're pale, and you turned down free champagne. That's illegal in this building." Richard didn't laugh. His eyes stayed locked on the waiter. "Do you see that kid?" Richard asked. "The waiter. White shirt, black vest, over near the governor's table." Mark followed his gaze. "Okay, I see him," he said. "Tell me," Richard murmured. "You don't think he looks exactly like—" He stopped. He hadn't said his son's name out loud in years. "Like who?" Mark asked softly. "Like Elias?" Richard's jaw tightened. "And the birthmark." "What birthmark?" Mark asked. "Left side of the neck," Richard said. "Small crescent. The doctor said it was rare, said it was like a little moon, said we'd always recognize him by it." Mark squinted as the waiter turned to pour champagne for a woman in a gold dress. His eyes widened slowly. "Okay," he said quietly. That's not nothing. Maybe it's just a resemblance, Mark added weakly. People say that all the time. I saw someone who looked just like you at Walmart. Could be that. It's not just the face, Richard said. It's his age, the birthmark, the way he moves, the timing. Something is wrong, Mark. Mark hesitated. Rich, what are you saying? I'm saying, Richard whispered, there's a real chance my son didn't die that night. And I'm not walking away from this. He waited until the event started to wind down. The band shifted to softer songs. Guests drifted toward the exits. Staff moved more freely now that the rush was over. Richard watched as the waiter slipped out through a side door with an empty tray. He followed. The hallway beyond the ballroom was quieter. Staff members passed by with carts and trays, but the noise was a distant hum now. Richard spotted him at a small service station, stacking clean glasses. "Excuse me," Richard said. The young man turned, then straightened quickly when he recognized him. "Yes, sir," he said. "Did I miss your table? I can get you a drink if—" "What's your name?" Richard asked. The young man blinked. Michael. Michael Carter." Michael, not Elias, but Richard's heart didn't slow down. "How old are you, Michael?" he asked. 21, sir," Michael said, confused. "Is something wrong?" "What's your birthday?" Richard pressed. "May 17th, Michael answered. "Where were you born?" "New York," he said. "St. Andrew's Memorial, uptown. Mom told me they had to rush her in while she was at work. Why are you asking me all this?" Richard's spine went cold. St. Andrew's. The same hospital. The same date. The same age. "What did your mother do?" Richard asked. "She was a nurse," Michael said. "Worked all over, but she talked about St. Andrew's a lot. She passed away a few years ago." "I'm sorry," Richard said quietly. "What was her name?" "Aisha," Michael said. "Aisha Carter." Richard's throat tightened. A black nurse named Aisha, working at St. Andrew's on May 17th, the night his son was born, and pronounced dead. Michael shifted his weight again. "Sir, is everything okay?" he asked. "Because this is starting to feel like an HR problem and I really don't want to get fired." Richard exhaled shakily. "You're right," he said. I'm handling this badly. I'm not trying to cause trouble for you. I just—" He paused, then made a decision. "Will you meet me after your shift?" Richard asked. "In the hotel lounge, somewhere quiet. I'll explain everything. And if you think I'm crazy afterward, you can walk away and forget you ever met me." Michael looked at him, cautious and curious. "My break is in like 30 minutes, he said. "We get 15. "I'll talk to your supervisor," Richard said. "I'll make sure you don't get in trouble. All I'm asking is, give me a chance to explain." Michael hesitated, then nodded slowly. "All right," he said. "But if this turns out to be something weird, I'm walking." "That's fair," Richard said. The lounge was dim, with low music, leather chairs, and soft lighting. A far cry from the glittering chaos of the ballroom. Richard sat in the corner, a glass of water untouched in front of him. When Michael walked in, no tray, no vest, just his white shirt and black slacks. He looked different, younger, more vulnerable. He sat down across from Richard. "So," Michael said, "what's this about?" "I need to tell you something personal," Richard said. "And then I need to ask you for something." Michael folded his arms loosely. "Okay." 21 years ago, Richard began, my wife and I went to St. Andrew's Memorial Hospital. She was in labor with our first child, a boy. Michael's posture changed. His eyes narrowed slightly, listening. "There were complications," Richard continued. "His cord was wrapped around his neck. The delivery was a mess. Doctors shouting, machines beeping, my wife screaming. And then, suddenly nothing, no crying. He swallowed. The doctor came in later and told us our son never took a proper breath. They tried to resuscitate him. It didn't work. He told us our baby died. Michael's voice softened. I'm sorry. That's horrible. There was a nurse there, Richard went on. Black, kind, calm. She stayed with my wife long after her shift. She comforted me in the hallway. Her name tag said, A. Carter, RN. Michael stared. My mom, he whispered. Richard nodded slowly. She was in labor that night too, Michael said suddenly, as if remembering. She told me once she wasn't supposed to be a patient. She was working when her water broke. She always said that night felt crazy. Richard took a breath. What I'm about to say may sound insane, he said, but the dates match. The hospital matches. Your mother's name matches. The way you look, your age, your birthday, the birthmark on your neck. Michael's hand subconsciously went to the left side of his neck. Richard met his eyes. I think there's a real chance, he said quietly, that there was a mix-up in that hospital 21 years ago. Michael stared at him like he'd just spoken a foreign language. A mix-up? He repeated. I think, Richard said, that the baby I was told died didn't. I think the living child was given to your mother and she was told he was hers. Michael shook his head, letting out a short, disbelieving laugh. You're telling me I might be your son? He asked. Some billionaire's long-lost kid? That's TV show stuff, man. I know how it sounds, Richard said, but I'm not saying this because of money. I'm saying it because something in me recognized you. And the facts keep lining up. Even if it's true, Michael shot back, what does that make my life? A mistake? My mom, my upbringing, my childhood, all just some hospital error? No, Richard said quickly. Your life is not a mistake. Your mother loved you. She raised you. She is your real mother in every way that matters. If anything, she's as much a victim as I am. Maybe more. Michael's jaw clenched. She always said, Michael murmured, that sometimes she'd wake up with this feeling that something went wrong the day I was born. But every time she tried to ask questions, people brushed her off. Richard's chest twisted. That sounds like this hospital, he said. He leaned in slightly. We won't know anything for sure unless we check, he said. I'm not asking you to believe me. I'm asking you to let the truth speak for itself. How? Michael asked. What are you thinking? A DNA test, Richard said. Just you and me. Private lab, no lawyers, no drama. If I'm wrong, you'll never hear from me again. If I'm right, he swallowed. If I'm right, then I owe you 21 years of explanations, he said, and a lifetime of showing up, if you'll let me. Michael stared at him for a long time. I don't know if I'm ready for this, he said. My whole life could flip upside down. I know, Richard said. Trust me. Mine too. Silence stretched between them. Finally, Michael exhaled. Okay, he said softly. I'll do the test. They went to a private clinic on the east side the next day. The lobby was all glass and marble. Michael walked in wearing a hoodie and jeans, looking around like he'd stepped into a different world. You really live like this, huh? He muttered. I live in meetings and emails, Richard said. This is just the wrapping paper. A nurse swabbed the inside of their cheeks, labeled the tubes, logged the info. It'll take a few days, she said. We'll call you when the results are ready. Outside on the sidewalk, Michael shoved his hands in his pockets. So that's it? He asked. We just wait? Pretty much, Richard said. Michael nodded slowly, then looked at him. You hungry? He asked awkwardly. Richard blinked. Are you asking me to lunch? I mean, Michael shrugged. If we're possibly related, we might as well find out if we can at least stand each other for one meal. Richard smiled. There's a diner around the corner. The diner was pure American comfort. Old booths, the smell of coffee and bacon, a waitress who called everyone honey. They slid into a booth by the window. "I'll have the usual, Ms. Jean," Richard said. She grinned. "Still black coffee and dry toast? Living dangerously, Mr. Hale." She turned to Michael. "And for you, sweetheart?" "Pancakes," Michael said, "with bacon and orange juice." As she walked away, Michael looked at Richard. "So," he said, "what were you like at my age?" "Broke," Richard said. "Working at an electronics store in Queens by day, trying to build a startup by night, eating cheap grilled cheese and pretending it was a choice." "Sounds familiar," Michael said. "Substitute electronics store for Crystal Crown Hotel and startup for night classes. And that's basically me." They sat in silence for a moment. "What would you have named him?" Michael asked suddenly. Richard's fork paused. "Who?" he asked quietly. "Your son," Michael said. "The one you thought you lost." "We named him Elias," Richard said. "My mother picked it. It means the Lord is my God." She wanted him to have a strong name. Michael said it under his breath. "Elias." He stared out the window. "My mom picked Michael," he said. "She said it meant, 'Who is like God?' And that every time someone said my name, it was like they were reminding me I was never alone." 2 names, 2 mothers, 1 city, 1 night. And as they waited for the test results, neither of them knew that the truth had already been written in hospital records, in a forgotten incident report, and in a doctor's guilty conscience. Richard couldn't just sit and wait for the DNA results. He needed more than a feeling and a birthmark. He needed proof, or a reason to let go. So he called St. Andrew's Memorial Hospital. As one of their biggest donors, he got a meeting fast. He sat across from Dr. Karen Willis, the hospital administrator, in a wood-paneled office lined with certificates and group photos. "I understand you're asking for access to old records," she said. "From over 20 years ago." "Yes," Richard said. "May 17th, 21 years ago. Labor and delivery. I want to see everything from that night. Any incident reports, any mention of a nurse named Aisha Carter." She frowned slightly. "That's a very specific request." "It's personal," he said simply. "I won't file a lawsuit based on guesswork. But I won't let the truth stay buried either." Dr. Willis studied him. "You've done a lot for this hospital," she said. "I'll have archives look. But I can't promise what condition the files will be in." "Do your best," Richard said. "I'll cover any cost." 3 days later, she called him back. "We found something," she said over the phone. "You should come in." He was in her office within the hour. She slid a folder across the desk. "These are copies. The originals remain in secure archive." Richard opened it. The first pages were familiar. Lena's admission chart. The notes about complications, emergency measures. His eyes moved to the line he'd never forgotten. Infant male. No spontaneous respiration. Resuscitation unsuccessful. Time of death, 4:12 a.m. He forced himself to keep going. The next chart made his heart skip. Mother, Aisha Carter. Admitted early morning May 17th with abdominal pain while on shift. Labor progressed quickly. Infant male, healthy. Transferred to neonatal observation. He swallowed. "She was a patient too," he said slowly. "Not just staff." Dr. Willis nodded. "Same night, same wing." She pointed to another page. "This is where it gets complicated," she said. It was an incident report. The handwriting was rushed, the lines slightly slanted. During shift change, confusion noted in neonatal unit over bassinet labels and ID bands. 2 infant ID cards found placed on wrong bassinets. Correction made after review. No harm noted. Supervisor informed. No further action required. At the bottom was a signature that punched the air from his lungs. Supervisor, Dr. Alan Pierce. The same doctor whose face had delivered the worst news of his life. Richard's jaw clenched. No harm noted. He repeated, his voice flat. What does that even mean in this context? It means, Dr. Willis said carefully, that someone recognized a labeling issue and believed they fixed it. It also means there was room for human error. If they got it wrong, Richard said, then my son went home with the wrong mother, and her son went... Where? Dr. Willis held his gaze. I think you know the answer, she said quietly. He stared down at the paper. That night, he whispered, 2 baby boys were lying in bassinets under fluorescent lights, and someone played musical chairs with their names. It was mishandled, she said. At best, reckless. At worst... She didn't finish the sentence. Where is Dr. Pierce? Richard asked, voice tight. Retired, she said. Lives upstate. I want his address, Richard said. Now. The house upstate was small and tired-looking. White paint peeling from the siding. A sagging porch swing. A dog barked from inside. The door opened before Richard could knock. An older man with thinning white hair and tired eyes stood there. Mr. Hale, he said quietly, I thought this day might come. Then you know why I'm here, Richard said. They sat at a modest kitchen table. The radio played low classic rock in the background. 21 years ago, Richard began, you told me my son died. I told you what I believed, Dr. Alan Pierce said, or what I chose to believe. What does that mean? Richard demanded. Pierce stared at his hands. That night was chaos, he said. We were understaffed. There was a storm. Power flickered twice. We had 2 urgent cases at the same time. Your wife and one of our own nurses. 2 boys born within a short window. One in serious distress. One perfectly healthy. He swallowed. In the rush of moving them to neonatal, someone misapplied ID bands, he said. When I was notified, I was told the labels had been corrected quickly. The Hale baby was the one in distress. The Carter baby was fine. He looked up, guilt heavy in his eyes. We attempted to resuscitate the baby labeled as yours, he said. He did not respond. The other child, labeled Carter, was healthy. Richard's chest burned. Years later, Pierce continued, I started to question if that correction was actually correct. But by then, the babies were home, their lives underway. I told myself reopening the question would destroy families, ruin the hospital, maybe shut it down. So you did nothing, Richard said coldly. I convinced myself the labels had been right, Pierce said, that questioning it would cause more harm than good. He hesitated, then added, but I wasn't the only one who doubted. A few months after the births, Aisha came to see me. She said she had nightmares about bassinets and labels. Said when she saw your wife in the recovery ward holding her dead baby's photo, something in her stomach twisted. And you told her what? Richard asked. That she was exhausted, Pierce whispered. That new mothers question everything, that she should rest. I dismissed her. Richard's hands curled into fists on the table. So you silenced the one person who tried to speak up, he said. You chose the hospital's image over the truth. Pierce's voice shook. I failed you, he said. I failed her, and I failed both boys. Richard stood suddenly, chair scraping loud against the floor. My son grew up without me, he said, anger and grief mixing. He worked double shifts while I sat in boardrooms. He buried his mother alone. And all this time, There was a piece of paper that said, "No harm noted." Pierce's eyes shone with tears. "I've thought about that night every day," he said. "I'm old now. There aren't many things left I'm afraid of. But I am afraid of the day I have to answer to God for what I did and what I didn't do." Richard stared at him for a long moment. Then he turned and walked out. There was nothing more he needed from this man. The next answer would come from science. The call from the clinic came the next day. "Your results are ready, Mr. Hale," the doctor said. "You can come by any time." He didn't wait. In the small consultation room, the doctor placed a thin envelope on the table. His name and Michael's were printed on the label. Richard opened it with trembling fingers. His eyes skimmed the lines until they hit the one that mattered. Paternity probability, 99.97%. He stared at the number. "Is there any chance this is wrong?" he asked hoarsely. The doctor shook her head. "The chance of error at that level is extremely small. Based on this test, yes, Michael is your biological son." Biological son. His son. Alive. 21. Carrying trays in a midtown hotel while Richard was being served 5-course meals in private clubs. "Thank you," Richard said, voice distant to his own ears. He walked out of the clinic feeling both heavier and lighter than he had in years. There was only one person he needed to see. He found Michael outside the Crystal Crown again, during a break, leaning against the brick wall with a paper cup of coffee in his hand. When Michael saw him, his eyes widened. "You got them," he said. "The results?" "I did," Richard said. "And?" Michael asked. Richard took a breath. "You're my son," he said quietly. "The test says there's a 99.97% probability. In our world, that's as close to yes as it gets." Michael's fingers loosened. The coffee cup slipped from his hand, hit the ground, and splattered brown liquid over the pavement. He didn't even look at it. He just stared at Richard. "No," he whispered. "No, that can't. My mom didn't lie. She would have told me. She never—" "She didn't lie," Richard said quickly. "She believed you were hers by blood. She questioned it once." The doctor shut her down. The hospital buried the report. "She raised you with everything she had." Michael's chest rose and fell rapidly. "So all that time," he said, "we were stretching one paycheck. She was working doubles. I was catching the bus to school while my biological father was being quoted in the Wall Street Journal." "Yes," Richard said, "and I hate that." Michael laughed once, bitter and shaky. "Yeah, well, so do I." He wiped at his face, surprised to find tears there. "What do I even call you now?" he asked. "Richard? Dad? Mr. Billionaire with bad timing?" "You can call me whatever you need to," Richard said. "I have no right to demand a title I didn't earn." Michael stared at him. "So what now?" he asked. "You sign some papers, move me into a penthouse, and we pretend the last 21 years didn't happen?" "No," Richard said firmly. "We don't pretend. We don't erase. We accept that your life was real, your mother's love was real, my grief was real, and now this is real too. And then we figure it out. Slowly." Michael's voice shook. "I used to imagine what I'd say if I ever met my father," he said. "Sometimes I thought I'd punch him. Sometimes I thought I'd hug him. Right now I just feel tired." "You don't have to decide today," Richard said softly. "You don't have to decide this year. All I'm asking is, don't shut the door completely." Michael looked away, staring at the street. "I get off at 10, he said finally. "You still go to that diner?" "Yeah," Richard said. "All right," Michael murmured. "If you want to talk more, I'll meet you there." He glanced back at Richard, eyes still red. "I'm not promising anything," he said. "I don't know how to be your son. I don't know how to be your father, Richard replied. Not yet, but we can start with coffee and bad toast. Michael snorted. Fine. See you at 10. As Richard walked away, one thought echoed in both their minds. The truth was finally out. But the real story of forgiveness, anger, identity, and second chances was only just beginning. It turned out, learning the truth was the easy part. Living with it was harder. In the weeks that followed, Richard and Michael met often, but nothing about it was smooth. Some nights, Michael showed up at the diner and barely talked, just stirred his coffee and stared out the window. Other nights, he peppered Richard with questions. What did you do at 21? Were you there for your parents the way you weren't there for me? Did you ever think about having another kid after him? After me? Richard answered as honestly as he could. I worked too much, tried to outrun the grief, he admitted. Your grandmother begged me to slow down. I didn't listen. Why didn't you have more kids? Michael asked one night. Because the first one broke something in me when I lost him, Richard said quietly. And the marriage didn't survive. By the time I could have tried again, I wasn't the kind of man who should raise a child. I didn't like who I'd become. And now? Michael asked. And now, Richard said, I'm trying to be someone my son might not be ashamed to know. Michael looked at him for a long moment. I don't know if I'm ready to forgive you, he said. Even though you didn't cause the mistake, you were still absent. Even if you didn't know about me, you were out there somewhere. That hurts. I understand, Richard said. You're allowed to feel all of that. They argued sometimes, too. You can't just throw money at everything, Michael snapped once when Richard offered to buy out his student loans, pay his rent, and move him to a nicer apartment in one conversation. I'm trying to help, Richard protested. Yeah, well, I don't want to feel like a project you're fixing, Michael shot back. I want to feel like a person you're getting to know. That night, they left the diner annoyed at each other. The next day, Richard texted, I'm sorry. You're right. I came in like a CEO trying to fix a problem instead of a father trying to build a relationship. Michael replied hours later, I'm not used to anyone showing up for me. I don't know how to handle it. I'm trying to. Slowly, something started to grow between them. Not perfection, not instant father-son magic, but something real. Richard helped Michael apply to a proper culinary program, not by forcing his name in, but by sitting beside him at the kitchen table in his penthouse, helping him with forms and essays. I'll cover the tuition, Richard said softly. No strings. Call it overdue child support. Michael hesitated, then nodded. Fine, but I'm keeping my part-time job. I don't want to forget how to hustle. Deal, Richard said. They went to therapy, separately at first, then together. They laughed sometimes, too. I imagined my dad was like a mechanic in Ohio, Michael said once. Didn't expect New York billionaire with his name on half of Midtown. It's not half, Richard said. Okay, a third, Michael joked. Relax. Months later, Michael texted him out of the blue. Can you meet me in Brooklyn at 3? Don't wear anything too expensive. Curious, Richard put on jeans and a plain shirt, still expensive, but at least looked normal, and took a car to the address Michael sent. He found himself standing in front of an empty storefront, dusty windows, faded "For Lease" sign. Michael stood on the sidewalk, hands in his pockets. What do you think? He asked. About what? Richard said. My future place, Michael said. My restaurant. If I don't screw it up. Richard looked through the glass. The space was small but had good bones. High ceilings. Exposed brick. You're serious, Richard said. Dead serious, Michael replied. I want to do elevated soul food. American comfort. Stuff Mom made, plus stuff I'm learning now. I want it to feel like home for people who never really had one. He swallowed, then added, but I'll need help. Financially, business-wise, and emotionally, probably. A slow smile spread across Richard's face. Now this, he said, I can help with, as a father, and as a man who knows a thing or two about leases. Yeah, Michael said, rolling his eyes. Just don't turn it into a sterile rich people spot. I want regulars, not just food critics. We'll keep the prices reasonable, Richard said. You have my word. Michael looked up at the storefront. I have a name in mind, he said quietly. Oh? Richard asked. Let's hear it. Elias and Aisha, Michael said. For the son you thought you lost, and the woman who found him. Richard's throat tightened. I think, he said softly, that's the most beautiful thing I've ever heard. When the story finally went public, it wasn't leaked by some journalist. Michael insisted they tell it on their terms. He sat in a local TV studio, lights bright on his face, mic clipped to his shirt. I grew up in Brooklyn with a single mom who worked nights as a nurse, he told the reporter. We didn't have much, but we had each other. She wasn't perfect, but she was everything to me. The reporter nodded. And now you've learned that, biologically, you're the son of billionaire businessman Richard Hale. How do you reconcile those two realities? Michael took a breath. I don't pick between them, he said. I'm both. I'm the son of Aisha, who worked herself to the bone so I could have a shot at life. And I'm the son of Richard, who spent 21 years grieving a child he was told died. He looked straight into the camera. The system failed us, he said. A mistake at a New York hospital, covered up out of fear, stole 2 decades from us. But I refuse to let that define me. I'm not just the billionaire's son. I'm not just the nurse's kid. I'm both. I'm all of it. That's America, too. Richard sat for his own interview. We have this idea that wealth protects you from everything, he said. But grief doesn't care about money. Hospital errors don't care about your last name. My son grew up riding the subway while I rode in town cars. That reality will haunt me for the rest of my life. The least I can do now is fight, so it never happens to anyone else. The hospital settled out of court. They issued a public apology. Policies were changed. Identity band protocols strengthened. Training programs established in Aisha's name. But the real redemption didn't happen in courtrooms or board meetings. It happened in a little restaurant in Brooklyn. The night Elias and Aisha opened, the line stretched down the block. A warm, yellow sign glowed over the door. Elias and Aisha, soul food, story food, home food. Inside, the place buzzed with energy, exposed brick walls, wooden tables, a small bar, photos on the walls, Polaroids of Michael and Aisha, a framed picture of Lena holding a tiny baby blanket in a hospital bed, a shadow box with a faded infant bracelet labeled Baby Hale, and the date May 17th. On a plaque beneath it, words were etched. To the mother who raised me and the father who found me. To the boy who was lost and the man he became. Michael, Elias Carter Hale. In the open kitchen, Michael moved like he belonged there, checking dishes, tasting sauces, shouting orders, laughing with his staff. Richard sat at the bar, not as the man who funded half the build-out, but as a customer and a father. Michael walked over carrying a plate. "What's this?" Richard asked. "Meatloaf," Michael said. "But not the dry brick you grew up hating. This is smoked barbecue meatloaf, Mom's recipe, remixed." Richard took a bite. It tasted like everything at once. Loss and love. Anger and mercy. Brooklyn and Manhattan. Past and future. "This is incredible," he said. Michael grinned. "Good. Might even put your name under it on the menu. Richard's Redemption Meatloaf." "Please don't," Richard groaned. They both laughed. Later that night, after the last guests left and the staff started cleaning, they stepped outside for some air. The sign above them hummed softly. Elias and Aisha. "You still resent me?" Richard asked quietly. Michael thought about it. "Sometimes," he said honestly. "When I think about the nights Mom cried because the bills piled up, when I picture you in suits while we were counting quarters for laundry, that doesn't just disappear." Richard nodded. "I don't expect it to. I resent myself too. But," Michael added, "I also love you, not in some neat movie-ending way. More like in progress, under construction." "In progress," Richard repeated, smiling. "I like that." Michael nudged him lightly with his shoulder. "You know what's crazy?" he said. "If the hospital hadn't messed up, I'd have grown up as Elias Hale. Private school, nannies, ski trips. I would have never known what the inside of a city bus smelled like at 6 a.m. "You say that like it's a blessing," Richard said dryly. "It is," Michael replied. "It made me me. And honestly, I like who I turned out to be. I wouldn't trade Mom's love or our struggle for anything." Richard's eyes shone. "I like who you are too," he said. "More than I can put into words." Michael looked up at the sign again. "Well," he said, "here we are. Your dead son's name, my mom's name, on one building." "In Brooklyn." "In America," Richard added. "In America," Michael agreed. They walked back inside together. A billionaire. A black American chef who used to be a hotel waiter. A father finding his son. A son refusing to abandon where he came from. Their story started with a birthmark and a mistake in a hospital, but it continued. At a table. With food. With truth. With two people choosing, again and again, not to walk away. Wait. Before you scroll, if this story pulled you in, then don't stop here. Like this video, comment your thoughts. What would you do if you were in his shoes? Subscribe to Hidden Tales Stories and turn on notifications so you never miss the next twist. Watch till the end. The truth will shock you more than you expect. Engage with me. What was the most emotional part for you? Do you think the billionaire is right to question the waiter? Should the young man trust him or walk away? What do you think that birthmark means? Drop your answer in the comments. I'm reading everything.